Good day, good evening,
Bonjour,
bonjour, bonsoir à tous, and welcome to this International Archives Week event. So let me first properly now introduce myself. I'm David Fricker. I'm the President of the International Council on Archives, and it's my great pleasure to welcome you all to this International Archives Week session. Let's talk about records, archives, and emerging technologies. Now, I should also advise you all that this session is being recorded because we do want to keep a record of our discussion today, including the chat and the questions to understand the topics of most interest to our members. I would also ask at the outset that you all turn off your microphones, put them on mute, and also turn off your cameras so that we can focus on hearing and seeing our speakers. Now, I should say I'm joining you from Canberra in Australia, and I'm on the lands of the First Nations of Australia, the Ngambri and the Ngunnawal people. And this being the decade of the Indigenous languages, and out of respect for our First Nations and the language of the Ngambri people, I say Naji, Injamali, Ngambri, Ngunnawal, Gurmal, Wolgalu, Wallabaloa, Wiradjuri, Mojigang Yanibu, Jandu. I'm paying my respects to those First Nations, to their elders, past and present. May I also extend my respects to all First Nations people joining us today. And I take this opportunity to reaffirm our commitment to the ICA's Tandanya Declaration, which is a set of commitments that we have made to properly respect the documentary heritage of the First Nations of the world. So, welcome to this inaugural event of International Archives Week 2022. This is our fourth International Archives Week, this year with the theme of Archives Are You. It's an invitation for archivists and records management professionals to join a global conversation about what it means to be an archivist and what archival records truly reflect and the potential value of archival collections for the betterment of our society. Now, as we know, technology is and will continue to be a major factor in how we realise that potential of archives. Indeed, how we realise that potential of us as archivists. So today's session is an excellent opener for this year's International Archives Week. And can I say, it is responding to many requests from across our membership. So use the convening power that we have in the ICA to bring together the best international knowledge, the best thinking on the topic of emerging technologies and archives, and to give all of us the opportunity to pursue further collaborative activities to improve your individual expertise and our collective expertise across the profession. So this is very exciting. I'm very excited about this, the beginning of International Archives Week, and I am not going to hold up the proceedings any longer. So let me now hand over to Meg Phillips, our Vice President Program, who's going to talk us through how we're going to run this session, and we'll introduce our speakers. So thanks, Meg, and it's over to you.
Thank you, David, and happy International Archives Week to everyone. As David said, I'm Meg Phillips, the Vice President Program for the ICA and the External Affairs Liaison for the United States National Archives and Records Administration. I'm speaking to you today from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, in the United States, which is on the ancestral lands of the Lenape, to whom I pay my respects. In our session today, we're going to explore how you will be using emerging technology to manage records and archives. Technology is a tool, not an end in itself. And so we want to talk about how you will be able to apply some emerging technologies that have been of particular interest recently to solve real problems in the field for the betterment of your archives, for your professional team, and for the public. So our program today is divided into three major segments. There'll be two presentations and one discussion with some panelists and also with you, the audience. The first educational presentation is on artificial intelligence and machine learning. The second is on blockchain and non-fungible tokens. And both sessions will quickly explain the technology and then talk about what it might mean for the archives field. The third segment is a panel discussion among our experts, but also a discussion with all of you, the ICA community. We'll be using the Zoom polls and asking you questions in chat, both things. And this is really the main point of this event from our point of view. We really want to hear more from you about how ICA can help you, what you're most interested in, and what we should plan to do next to support the ICA community and its engagement with emerging technology. So we do hope that this will be the beginning of an ongoing conversation within ICA using new ways of interacting across our usual branches, sections, and expert groups. This is a topic that's of interest to all of us, and as David said, has been popping up in discussions from all over the ICA community. So we're going to be introducing our speakers right before they speak. So with this, I'm going to introduce the moderator for the next segment of the program, Dr. Rebecca Bayek. Dr. Bayek is an assistant professor in the Department of Instructional Technology and Learning Sciences at Utah State University. She's the founder, director, and project lead of the Hub for Artificial Intelligence Research in Archives. She also organized an ICA-sponsored workshop this spring on AI and archival appraisal and selection, which was sold out almost as soon as it was announced. But the videos of that workshop are available now on ICA's YouTube channel. So if this is a topic of interest to you, I encourage you to check out those videos. So with that, I'm going to turn the floor over to you, Rebecca. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Meg, for having me. And also thank you to everyone who is on stage. So I think the next part of this presentation is just for me to kind of just get and invite my other speakers to come on stage and just share what is it that we are going to discuss today. So without further ado, I think I'm going to invite my other colleague to come on stage and just share with us what is it that we're thinking about, at the discussion today. So we're going to shift the discussion to the educational segment to actually talk about what we see the priority of ICA and priorities over the next few years, and what you or the members of the audience today will find most useful. We are going to take advantage, of course, of all the expertise of everyone here. So we will have a few high-level questions and a few to bring to you. We will ask just everyone to respond to the poll question. So again, over to you. One person will serve, of course, to moderate the question, but the third person, okay. So one thing that I want to ask is to have Robert now, if Robert does not mind, to kind of just come in and have us, lead the conversation. I hope I'm not missing anything. Robert, do you mind coming on stage?
Instead of Robert, maybe I can do the next segment here. Okay. Our next introduction will be actually a pre-recorded segment from Dr. Mohammed Abdul-Majid, whose session, as we said, had to be recorded before we were able to join live today. So Mohammed Abdul-Majid is a Canada Research Chair in Natural Language Processing and Machine Learning at the University of British Columbia. Mohammed's research is in deep learning and natural language processing. So can we cue the video, please?
Hi, everyone, and welcome to this presentation. I am Mohammed Abdul-Majid, and I am going to present to you today about deep learning, in particular, deep learning for records and archives, which is somewhat the focus of this presentation. I am from the University of British Columbia, and I'm presenting to you today from Vancouver, Canada, which is the unceded territory of the Musqueam people. So I acknowledge being here and having the privilege of living on this land. So I usually like to start talking about artificial intelligence, just like going a little bit back and, remembering that humans have created amazing things throughout history. So, the themes of art, nature, and diversity, as you can see on the slide here, are tightly related to artificial intelligence, because humans have always created artifacts, whether this is like some sort of visual art or things such as like these intricate patterns that you see in the middle, as well as the focus that we welcome different types of communities, different genders, people from different backgrounds to this particular domain of artificial intelligence, so that we can enrich our experiences. So the image that you see here on the right-hand side is Ada Lovelace, who has contributed early on to computer science. So when we talk about artificial intelligence, I think we need to remember the fact that it's a field that is, now under a lot of focus, but we shouldn't lose track of the biggest problems that we face in the world today. So we face pressing problems such as the problem of misinformation, for example, or global conflict, or the issue of climate change. And I believe that whatever we study, we should always remember to try to contribute to these problems with our expertise. And that is one of the things that I keep in mind when I talk about artificial intelligence. And I also want to highlight for you. In particular, there is also this challenge of social inequality. There's a lot of poverty in the world, and this is the result of disease, the result of lack of enough education, and so on. And so the talk that I'm going to provide to you today also has this challenge of social inequality in the background, which is, again, something that I wanted to put under your radar so that you also remember while you are doing your important work. With that said, when we talk about AI and records and archives, what is the biggest question that you have here? One of the things that we focus on in some of the research I'm doing within my research group, and also in connection to some of the collaborations that we have, is this question about developing AI systems for records and archives, in ways that are competent and efficient, while also maintaining the nature and trustworthiness of the records. So that is something that we have as an objective. And how can we do it? I think we can always ask ourselves this question. Okay, what are the things that we would like to do? If you are an archivist and your day-to-day job requires particular tasks, and maybe a starting point that is good enough is to ask yourself this question: what are the archival functions that I would like to carry out? And then deriving from this question is, okay, can I break down these archival functions into specific AI tasks? So because we have to be able to work with computers, and computers are very particular. And so you would have to actually break down your job into these small pieces that can be handled by computers. And, one thing here is that good tasks are ones that are very clearly defined, because, again, you're working with computers. And I think a good way to go is to start from simple to complex. So start doing something that is simple first, make sure that it works, and then go to a more complex task and reiterate, through this type of pattern. All right, and there are also some ideas around what types of methods that you should be using while working on your day-to-day tasks. So one of the goals that we have in our research group and in our collaborations, for example, within the Enterprise Trust AI, is to develop AI methods to tackle all these tasks that you can break your archival job into. So we developed the methods, and we also want to focus on the state-of-the-art methods, SOTA, because there's a lot of progress in AI right now, and the methods get updated very quickly. But it's not only a question of working with state-of-the-art, it's also a question of, can we develop methods that are explainable? Because we would like whatever we do to make sense, and we would like to know why it is making a particular decision. And we also want it to be interpretable. So you will always be faced with this challenge while going about your job. So you are required to do something, and maybe you have some options. And when you are making your decision, so would you go for something that is state-of-the-art, or maybe something that is not quite state-of-the-art, but it's kind of like more explainable and more interpretable? And there are some trade-offs between these, as you can imagine. The work we do also requires us to collect data and to use these data to develop systems. And so one of the things that we try to do is to identify, acquire, and develop data sets. And then there are a lot of questions when you start working with data that you would need to answer. So questions related to ethics, do I have the right to work with this data? Like, am I collecting this particular data set under the right conditions? Issues related to privacy, ownership of the data, respecting the community from which the data is coming from and their norms. So there are lots of important questions that need to be kept in mind when you are working with data in order to develop AI systems. And all of these questions are very important. And then once you have some technology already developed, then the very important question remains, okay, when can I declare success? So now I have this technology, I have developed it or acquired it and started to use it. How can I know that I'm actually successful? This technology is the right technology for the work I do. So developing metrics of success is an important question that we also have when we carry out artificial intelligence work on records and archives. And maybe people who do AI already have some metrics to measure the progress of their systems, but it may be the case that you have to also contribute something as a domain expert to say, okay, yes, maybe this system is very accurate using your own metrics, but it doesn't really fulfill the task that I wanted it to fulfill. And so you would start a discussion at that point. Some of the work we do, we have a lot of focus on human resources. So in the I Trust AI collaboration that I co-direct with my colleague Luciano Duranti, for example, we have a major training component. So we offer lots of training opportunities through invited talks such as this one, providing tools that we develop and release to the public, offering workshops, courses, tutorials, and things that are related to this literacy component. And I think it is very important for records managers and archivists to keep this in mind, to devote part of your time to actually learning about the new technologies and how to use them and how to work with them. So literacy is very important. All right, so let me actually move the discussion a little bit toward the focus on AI itself. So you can think about AI as a big field, and then one of the subfields of AI is machine learning, which is about automating tasks that are classically thought of as the domain of humans. And yet a subfield of machine learning is deep learning. So when you see people talking about artificial intelligence nowadays, they are more often than not actually talking about deep learning, because it is behind the big progress that you see happening. And I'll give you an idea about deep learning in the next few slides. But before doing this, let me actually tell you, how we actually classify different deep learning systems. And we can do this based on the type of what we call supervision in the system. So we usually work with data, and maybe we give this data to humans to look at and classify for us. So we call this a gold data set or ground truth data set. So for example, I have some books by Dante and some books by Shakespeare, and humans have actually already given me these labels on the data, and then I can use a data set to develop a system that in the future will be able to take a previously unseen book and tell me whether this book is written by Dante or Shakespeare. We call this a supervised machine learning system. The resulting system is a supervised machine learning system. Meanwhile, if I don't have any labels on the data that humans have assigned, because labeling data is very costly, is very time consuming, is very laborious, one thing I can do is unsupervised machine learning, which is about giving the data to a model and basically the model clustering the data for me. And then maybe I can look at the cluster and say, I think this cluster belongs to books written by William Shakespeare. So you'd have some human involvement later on down the line. One method that is actually in between called semi-supervised learning. And it's all about starting with a small amount of training data and then building a model and then using that model to predict on previously unseen data. And then maybe you take your most confident predictions from this initial model and then add this most confidently predicted data to your training data and bootstrap the model, like basically retrain it with larger data. And that method is one type of semi-supervised learning. In particular, it's called self-training. There are other types of semi-supervised learning, but you see the big picture. We can talk about supervised, unsupervised, and semi-supervised machine learning. Okay, let me actually now give you a quick idea about deep learning. So in the left top hand side here of this slide, you see the human cortex and some visual object that I see, as a human going through my my retina, the retina of my eye, and then the information passes through different regions in the brain, and at each region, I start to recognize some information or like get to know something about what I have seen. When you see a human face, you don't actually recognize that it is a human face right away. It takes some stages, but because we are humans and this process happens so fast, we almost don't recognize that it takes all these different stages, but it does. And so we take this intuition, from how information is processed in the human brain, and then we can actually build artificial neural networks that try to mimic this human neural network, which is the brain basically, and work with like systems in that way. So what you see on the top right hand side is, okay, this is a recurrent neural network, one type of deep neural networks. So it can take some information. So let's say, for example, I'm giving it tokens or words from a sentence going from X1, X2, X3. Each of these X's is a word. And then this information passes through the system that has like different layers. So each row that you see here with these, HT, HT minus 1, HT plus 1, basically each of these circles is a node or an artificial neuron that takes this input and then does some processing on it and maybe passes it to another layer of artificial nodes. So this neural network has like these two layers, we call them hidden layers. And then, the network may be able to predict. So maybe would take a word and it will tell me, oh, this word is a noun, or this word is an adjective, or this word is a verb. Or maybe it will give me a translation of this word in a different language. So to summarize, what you see here is a recurrent neural network. In particular, it's called bidirectional because it can look at the information from left to right as well as from right to left. So bidirectional recurrent neural network, and we can actually build like many of these. So for example, you can have, if let's say you wanted to do machine translation, and so you can take one of these networks and you will require it to take input from, let's say, English, and you could call this network an encoder, as you see in the bottom right-hand side here. And then another network, which you would call a decoder, would actually take this English data and then translate it into, let's say, French. So this is what is known as sequence-to-sequence models. Very quickly, on the bottom left-hand side here, what you see is part of what is known as a convolutional neural network, which is another type of architecture, deep neural network architecture. So basically, it's a method of taking some input, let's say in the form of a matrix, and taking snapshots, like overlapping snapshots of this object, and doing some sort of like mathematical operation, in between, such that eventually it would tell me, oh, this is a cat versus this is a dog. Okay, I realize that I'm staying very high level, but this is some information about some types of classical artificial neural networks. And one that is actually very popular right now is called the transformer network, the one that you see in this slide here. Without getting into details, again, this is a type of network that allows us to take an object. Let's say this object can be, an image, or maybe a sentence, or maybe a piece of audio. And basically, it will break it down into small components. So if it is a sentence, it will break it down into tokens or words. And then basically, it allows each token to look at itself, but also at any other token in the same object, such that it does what is known as self-attention. And so this idea of self-attention is a backbone of this transformer model. And then it allows us to learn really quite well. So this is now the technologies that is behind almost all the breakthroughs that you see happening, whether in self-driving cars or machine translation or speech processing and other areas of applications. And people have taken it and have developed it in particular ways and so on, but that remains the bigger model that's behind this progress. All right, I've talked about different types of machine learning as to how we use the data. So I said we have supervised, unsupervised, but also semi-supervised machine learning. In fact, 1/4 type of supervision that is actually very popular and very crucial to a lot of the systems that we build nowadays is called self-supervised learning. And it is in models such as the BERT model that came out from Google, but also models that are recently deployed by or developed by Facebook AI. And we have also, in my own research group, have developed many of these models to do different natural language understanding and generation tasks. Basically, self-supervised learning is a very simple idea. So let's say you wanted to allow the system to understand the language. So you would take, a huge data set, let's say the whole English Wikipedia, and then basically you take each sentence from the data set and you go around and randomly remove or mask some tokens or words. And then you ask the model to tell you which words were these. So, and by asking this question, and because you already know which words you have removed, then you have the labels for this question, basically. This is why we call it self-supervised, because we already have the labels in the running, naturally occurring data. And by just doing this with a huge amounts of data, we are able to build systems that really understand quite well. And that is basically when this came out, it kind of like, improved the state of the art across a lot of tasks. All right, so, deep learning is behind a lot of scientific discoveries and breakthroughs, whether it is in biology, astronomy, agriculture, chemistry, and the other domains of knowledge right now. It's everywhere. And so the question is, can we take this and apply it to archives? And like, how do we do this? I have already discussed with you some of the things that should come to your mind when you start actually thinking about AI and records and archives. But let me actually delve a little bit deeper and give you a little more information about certain technologies that may be relevant to your day-to-day work. Before doing this, I should also mention that deep learning is in a lot of speech and language technology applications. If you use Google Translate, for example, that's the technologies that is there. If you use any speech system like Siri or Alexa or some of these virtual assistants, it's actually the technologies that is deployed in production in these systems. There are also these technologies that combine language and image. So you give the system an image, and then the system will be able to generate a natural language description of what's in the image. And that's actually very useful for people who cannot see, so have some issues with their vision. You can wear glasses, and whatever is there, so the glasses will see an image, and then it will actually describe in natural language what you are seeing. So I hope you can see why these systems can be actually very useful, while not forgetting all the ethical questions around them, as well, as I mentioned in the beginning. All right, so let's actually talk about natural language processing very quickly, and I'll give you some examples of their applications with a focus on archives. So when we talk about natural language processing, we can think of two things: natural language understanding, and these are systems that allow us to take, let's say, a piece of text and summarize it, or take a piece of text and tell us, what category this text is. Like, is this poetry, or is it some other type of, a journal article, for example, or a piece of news? So it does a lot of classification, summarization, these types of tasks. There is also natural language generation, which is an example of it is machine translation. You take text in one language, and then you generate the equivalent of it in another language. Or I give you a question, and then you give me an answer. So that's like you generate the answer. So natural language processing can be broken down into understanding and generation. And let me tell you some examples from natural language understanding, for example. So, and this is actually can be relevant to archives. So you can, if you have some data, and I'm giving you the example of a sentence here, you kind of like split it into words, and then you want to know that this word is for example, I here is a pronoun, like is is a verb, to is some sort of a particle, read is a verb, books is a noun. And so this level of furnishing or like putting some additional part of the speech tag information on top of your data can allow you to do interesting things down the line. So you can imagine, for example, knowing that this is this is a noun, it's not a verb, being useful for some task. This will become clearer later on in my slides. In particular, let's go here, for example. So you have an ancient document, and there is a technology called named entity recognition that would allow you actually to specify, if a word is the name of a person, a place, or an organization. And that is related to part of the speech tagging, but it's a technology in and of itself. It can use part of the speech tagging as a kind of a helper function, if you would. Okay, another technology that may be useful for records managers and archivists is this topic modeling technology, which is an old technology, but there are new ways of doing it with deep learning as well. And you have lots of information, let's say tons of incoming data, and you want to actually know which topic this part of the information, or like the documents or the record belong to, and which other topic this other part belong to. And topic modeling can allow you to actually do some of that. Okay, obviously you would need to delve a little bit deeper and know how these technologies work and so on, but there are tools and software that exist out there off the shelf that you can use. There's also text classification, as I mentioned earlier, and this can be very relevant to many different things. So for example, you can imagine a system that takes in a document and tells you which parts of this document are sensitive, or which parts of this document are actually not appropriate. So you want to actually remove them or mask them somehow. Or maybe you wanted to know the emotion in these different parts of text. So that text classification is your friend. That's the technology that you can use for doing some of that. There's also work that allows you to do descriptions of visual archives. So lots of images out there, you want to actually kind of generate some descriptions of them. The technology, the image captioning technology that I have already mentioned can be relevant here. But because this is a particular domain, maybe you will have to retrain a system on some data that actually can be very useful in this particular domain. So maybe off-the-shelf tools will not work very well for you. You have to create the technology yourself. Or maybe take an existing technology and work with it and be happy with like it being useful, I don't know, 70% of the time. All right, there's also machine translation. I have talked about it previously. I won't talk more about it, but it's simple and straightforward, and maybe it can be relevant to some of the work you do as well. Image captioning, I have mentioned it, but here it can be image captioning with attention. So basically, not only giving a description of the image, but also highlighting a particular part of the image and telling you what this part is. So for example, the frisbee here in the very left image is highlighted, and we have it underlined in the image caption as well. All right, so you can use this to generate museum image captioning. There's also generative deep learning, which is a technology that allows us to write stories or even generate images. And OpenAI has had some progress in this, but everywhere, like all the big tech have been able to do this as of now. So these are some examples from the DALL-E, software that came out from OpenAI. It takes like some sentence and it can generate, for example, an armchair in the shape of an avocado that you see in the bottom here. And recently they actually developed this even further to generate very interesting things that I don't really have time to talk about, but you can look up DALL-E 2, which generates like all these nice and interesting and diverse images. So it can generate, for example, a propaganda poster depicting a cat dressed as a French emperor, blah, blah, blah. So that's like the very bottom row in the middle here. So that's the image. And Google actually came out with something similar to this just a few days ago, and it does like very photorealistic images, given some natural language input. So it's very exciting, and this technology can be used for so many different tasks. And maybe the question here is, how can this be relevant to your own work? And maybe that's like an exercise that you would have to go through yourself. Because the technology gets out there, and initially we don't know how to take it and apply it in our own domain, or maybe we do, but we don't have complete full understanding of how we can do that. And then by just engaging, then you can get there gradually, maybe. One thing that I mentioned earlier is the importance of literacy and knowing about the technology and how the technology is created and how to use the technology and so on. Recently, I have, along with my group members in my research group, launched Learnera.ai, which is an educational platform for deep learning training. And so if you go to Learnera.ai, you would have several resources like code and so on, but also recorded videos that introduce some of these technologies. And we will keep adding to this effort over time. With that, I would like to also acknowledge some of the partnerships and some of the collaborators that are working along my side, very bright minds here. So we have two large partnerships ongoing. One is about literacy in education, so ensuring full literacy that you see on the middle top part here, but also the iTrustAI partnership. Both of these are actually supported by the Social Sciences and the Humanities Research Council of Canada. We try to tackle pressing problems, timely, critical problems. And then I also would like to acknowledge all the supporters of our research, whether it's like NSERC, CFI, Google, other types of organizations that have been wonderful supporting us. I'd also like to thank Canada Research Chair program that is also supporting me. And, basically I've listed some of these here. And that is my last slide.
Thank you so much. We want to thank Dr. Ahmad Mohammed actually for his presentation. This was really, really, really insightful. And I think one thing that I'm taking away from it is just like when in the record management or archives, right? So the technology is out there, but actually you have to engage with it to see how it can fit in your own work. So I think that's just powerful. And so with that, we're going to shift to our second major topic, which is blockchain and non-fungible tokens or NFTs, right? So, and we with this presentation, actually our presentation on blockchain and NFT will be given by Dr. I must pronounce it, but I'm going to try. So it's going to be given by Dr. Fortier Stanchik. He's a full professor and chair of archival and documentation sciences at the Department of Information and Communication Sciences, as well as vice dean for organization and development at the Faculty of Humanity and Social Sciences, University of Zagreb, Croatia. He was director of the Interpass Trust Projects team, Europe until 2019. And currently, he is a member of the research committee at the Interpass Trust AI project. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Stanchik for us to kind of introduce us to NFTs. And I'm really excited because one thing about NFTs is that if you hear a lot is that so many people are actually making money of it. So to see how archivists and, record management people can take advantage of this technology is really exciting. So over to you, Dr. Stanchik.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. First of all, I would like to share a presentation, but I currently cannot. So if you could allow me to share the presentation, please. Just let me know when it's going to be possible.
Yeah, hold on. I think our support team would do it in the back there.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. So meanwhile, I would also like to welcome you to this workshop on behalf of a Croatian Archival Society, which I'm a member of the board as well. So, okay, now I'm set to be able to share my screen, and I hope you can see the presentation now. Assuming you can.
Yes, we can see it now.
Thank you very much. My topic today is what is blockchain, and I would like to speak on the topic and walk you through these contents and let you know how blockchain could fit into archives and what its role could be. So first of all, I would like to say that documents and records today increasingly, and I would almost say by default, created in digital form, but we still have a lot of paper documents, which have a potential of being digitized because they hold a great value of our history. Of course, we are facing some new challenges in the context of both digitized and digital records. For example, we need to preserve digital records for a certain amount of years or permanently. So we have detected some challenges around that. And when I said we, I mean we at the Interpares Trust project, and I will be speaking about the research of the previous Interpares Trust project, just as Mohammed has just walked you through the topics we are addressing at the current Interpares Trust AI project. So in terms of long-term preservation, we are facing some challenges, and we are all aware of them. We need to preserve authenticity, integrity, reliability, and usability of digital records, but also some digital records are digitally signed. So we need to preserve their non-repudiation, the security sometimes of important records, and confidentiality. However, we have detected, as I said, certain challenges, especially in the context of digitally signed records, because the digital certificates they are relying upon expire in 2 to 5 years. So this is just a reminder of the definition of advanced electronic signature as the eIDAS European regulation defines it. So it is said that it is uniquely linked to the signatory, that it is capable of identifying the signatory, that it is created using means that the signatory can maintain under his sole control, and it is linked to the data to which it relates in such a manner that any subsequent change of the data is detectable. So advanced electronic signatures rely on qualified certificates in order to prove the identity of the signatory. So we can say that qualified certificates guarantee the authenticity and identity of the signatory, but because of the fast advancements of information technology and the computer power, they are issued to the period of 2 to 5 years in order to prevent breaking down of the algorithms used for secure signing. So the challenges with digitally signed records are the short expiration period of digital signatures, the possibilities of certificate revocation anytime during the validity period of the digital signature. In terms of long-term preservation, if we want to keep digitally signed records verifiable, we will need either to do re-signing from time to time, and this is going to be this might be an extensive process, and we also depend on the trusted third parties, and this is the certification authorities issuing digital certificates. So here is the example of one of my signatures applied to a document in 2016, and my digital signature expired in 2018. So yes, we can still guarantee or check the integrity of the record, but you will get an error if you would like to check computationally whether this signature is still valid, and can you then use this document as a basis for other procedures in your institution. So there are certain suggestions, and in this case, it's a standard how you can go around this process, this situation of expiring digital signatures. So first of all, you have we call it basic signature, which is applied to document and signed attributes. Then you can wrap around it in an onion-like process, a signature with time, so that you know when the signature is placed. You add timestamp, and then you can wrap it around again with a signature with long-term validation material, which then adds information on certificate and revocation data. And then you can wrap still around it from time to time again, archival timestamp. This is a signature providing long-term availability and integrity of validation materials. So just before the archival timestamp expires, it will expire, but maybe in a little bit longer time than digital signature, then you will have to do it again, and again. And this is a process that you will need to manage in your digital archive if you want to preserve digitally signed records, unless, of course, you use blockchain. And this is something that we have been investigating in and researching over the last Inter Pares Trust project, just one of almost 100 different studies in that project. So the study I have led was called Model for Preservation of Trustworthiness of the Digitally Signed, Timestamped and or Sealed Digital Records, where we have devised a so-called trust chain model, which in the end, in last year, was also exhibited at an international innovation exhibition ARCA in Zagreb, and received a bronze medal for innovation. So we could say that this is an approved innovation or a recognized innovation. Before I explain the concept behind the Trust Chain project, I would like to just briefly walk you through the concept of blockchain so that you understand how it could be used or where its possible applications might be in the context of archives. So these are the four conceptual things that you need to understand before you fully understand how blockchain works. So we'll start by hash algorithms, continue to build up on top of that with a concept of Merkle tree, then the concept of chaining of top hashes will be explained, and finally I will explain the distributed consensus. So hash algorithm is a one-way, and this is important, one-way mathematical function which creates a hash value, a message digest, you could say, you could call it, like shown here in yellow letters, of any different document. So apart from being one-way mathematical function, it is also a unique code of any different document or record, and you could call it a digital fingerprint. First of all, when I say it is one-way function, it means that you cannot by any means go from knowing hash, like shown here on the left side, to finding out what the document was. This is because you will get the same length hash value out of one-page document and, for example, 2 hours video. So you cannot recreate a document just by knowing hash. It is unique, as I said, like a digital fingerprint, and this means that you could always differentiate between two different records. If we want to continue building this, then I would like to say that you can hash different hashes together. So you can create a hash or a message digest by combining different hashes together. And this is concepts shown here. So if you have, for example, 10 documents, you can create 10 hashes of 10 documents and then combine 10 hash values into one. You can do that with the next 10 documents and so on. And then you can again combine second level hash values together in a so-called root hash or top hash. So this is what we call a Merkle tree. So if one hash changes, for example, this one of the document number 10, then the calculation upwards will be wrong. So if everything calculates correctly, then you can be sure that none of the underlying documents or records have changed. This is how it could be done together. I'm using a simple MD5 hash generator available online. So these are, for example, hashes of 3 different documents combined together to have just one root or top hash. Okay, so why am I explaining this? Because we will continue explaining the concept of chaining of top hashes. So now we know what a hash is, how we can combine them together to form Merkle tree. And now if I have ended up with this top hash shown on the left side in orange color, then I can repeat the process with the next tree, but I will not stop with the same level top hash. I will go one way up and combine it together with the previous top hash. And then again, shown on the right-hand side, when calculated another hash, I will then combine it with the previous top hash. So if everything calculates well from the and correct from the left-hand side, then I know that nothing has changed. And this is how we chain top hashes. And this is used in a concept called distributed or peer-to-peer consensus. And this is why a blockchain is a distributed ledger technology, because at least 50% plus one computers participating in a distributed network confirms that the calculation is correct. If they confirm, then this is registered in each ledger of each distributed network computers. And this is how actually blockchain works. So we know what is on the bottom left side here, which ends up with a top hash. It combines with the hash of the previous block to calculate a block hash, a new block hash, and this is confirmed by the distributed network of computers, of users, and if confirmed, it is stored there. What is important here is that you do not store your records on the blockchain. You just send hashes of your records and maybe just a little bit of metadata for the search functionality. But your records still need to be preserved in your digital archives. So the trust chain model we have developed at the Inter Pares Trust project actually works like this. You submit a new documents to a trust chain blockchain, and if it's a digitally signed record, then this distributed group of archival trusted institutions participating in a trust chain conceptual blockchain checks the validity of digital signature. If it's valid, then it registers the validity information of this signature in the blockchain. Later on, when you want to check the validity of digital signature, and if it is already expired, then by recalculating the hash of the record, you will be able to confirm that the record itself, it did not change. If you check the validity of digital signature, you would get the information that it is expired. But if you check the validity, whether the validity was confirmed at the entry point to the blockchain and to the preservation process, then if it is confirmed and nothing has changed, the record itself did not change, then you could effectively work with this record as if its digital signature is still valid. So can you start before we developed trust chain, or before the trust chain is developed by international group of experts? So what you already have is your digital, your document management system or records management system or OI's compliant archive. And you have document or records creators at one side and documented records users on the other side. You can upgrade this solution with a blockchain, with a connection to blockchain, and you can send your hashes of your records to be registered in a blockchain in order to prove their integrity over time. And this is the example that we have done at my faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences, University of Zagreb. And I could proudly say that this is a project that I have initiated and implemented, and that we are first in Croatia for this. We have built a system of diploma authentication system, and we are authenticating physically issued diplomas by blockchain. So we have added a QR code with a short explanation here at the back side of the diploma. And when an employee scans this QR code, it is taken to the proof from the blockchain distributed system, and no one could forge our diploma, for example. So this is a proof that they are getting from the blockchain, that this particular diploma with this particular information has been registered by my faculty. So this is just a proof from the blockchain. Of course, you get the human readable information as well. So we have created the system, and it is functional, fully functional, for authentication of diplomas issued in paper by blockchain-based system. So this is a good combination of paper-based system and new and advanced technologies. We have, by doing this, eliminated the repetitive tasks, because our employees would be less and less required to authenticate physical diplomas. We have made grounds for electronic diplomas, for e-diplomas, as fully digitally issued diplomas. And we have, and this is most important, I think, use blockchain not just to say that we are using blockchain, but we have used blockchain where it added value, where it adds value. And this is important, to find such situations where blockchain adds value. And of course, we are, I think, creating new types of records that the archives will need to keep. And by saying that, I'm coming towards the end of my presentation, where I'm just in one slide trying to say what NFTs are. So NFT stands for non-fungible tokens, and they are unique digital originals. By using NFTs, you are using blockchain system in the background, and you are able to prove the ownership of a digital object and differentiate it from a copy of that digital object. Currently, it is the main focus of NFTs is put to selling digital art, or what someone might call a digital art. This is the example of the famous selling of composite image by digital artist Beeple at Christie's last year for $69.3 million US. So you can see that NFTs are gaining some attraction here. They are creating a new types of archival records, if you want to look at it that way, but it still remains to be seen how it could be used properly in the context of archival records, possibly for tracing originals, but I'm just drawing your attention here that there are some other solutions built specifically to trace digital originals in terms of records, not digital arts. And I invite you to take a look at that. So blockchain, to sum everything up that I have said so far, could confirm integrity of digital records, could prove the existence or creation at a certain point in time, could confirm sequence, because in blockchain you can only add. This is an append only structure. You can only add and you can never delete. And you can also ask, oh, what if I register something that needs to be changed later on? You just simply register another improved record. You cannot delete from the blockchain, but as a reminder, you keep your records in your digital archives. They never leave your system. Blockchain could support or enhance non-repudiation, but could also improve validation and preserve validity of digitally signed records. So to conclude, by using blockchain or trust chain, if it's going to be developed one day, you can establish the new generation of archival and business-oriented e-services. And this is something that I think that archives are somehow expected to be doing. You can enable anyone to connect using application programming interface to your digital records. You could also preserve authentic digital records with the help of blockchain principles. And most of all, as I have, most importantly, as I have said earlier, you can prove integrity, you can prevent fraud, and most importantly, you can gain transparency. These are some resources from that I would like to share with you, and I will be sharing this presentation as well later on. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Hervé and Rebecca. Please don't go away. We're about to shift into a more free-flowing discussion of what these technologies really will mean for archives, what they mean for ICA's work, and all of our priorities over the next few years, and also what you, all the members of our audience today, would find most useful for us to do. So we're going to take advantage of the expertise that Rebecca and Hervé are bringing to us today. And we're going to add a few new colleagues who have been active in the professional program of ICA to add their ideas and to help facilitate the discussion with the audience. So as I said, we're introducing our speakers as we add them. So I've got a few more introductions to do quickly now. First, John Roberts is Chief Privacy Officer and Archivist of Ontario, Canada. He's the co-chair of the ICA Expert Group on Managing Digital and Physical Records, and he's also been involved with Parbica over the years. John will be serving as the moderator for the next segment, our discussion amongst the panel and with you, our audience. Next, we have Samaya Langley. She's the Digital Preservation Manager at the Science Museum Group in the UK. She has a background in culture and technology, and across the past 2 decades of her career, she's worked in Australia, in Germany, in Japan, and in the UK. She's the other co-chair of ICA's Expert Group on Managing Digital and Physical Records. And finally, we have Hamid Al-Muteri, the Director of the Archives Department at the National Archives of the United Arab Emirates. He's also a member of ICA's Program Commission. He joined the National Archives of the UAE in 2009. He's an IT professional and enthusiast with practical experience in strategic planning, risk management, and archives management. So with that illustrious group, we will have a few high-level questions for our experts to discuss among themselves, and also a few questions to bring to everyone in the audience. We'll ask everyone to respond to the poll questions that will pop up on your screen in Zoom. So pay attention and respond to the questions when you see them. We really do want your input, so please do participate. We'll make it very easy. And to lead our discussion, I'm going to turn the floor over now to John Roberts.
Thanks, Meg, for the introductions there. And as you say, in this final session, we're really going to try and look at this huge territory that Mohammed and Hervé have just outlined for us and get a bit of a sense of where should we focus as an archival community. Both some thoughts from our panel, but also importantly, some thoughts from all of you about where we and the ICA can help us as professionals navigate this vast and ever-changing landscape. And to start off, we're just going to get a little bit of, I guess, a baseline around people's familiarity with the space. And our first poll question, which will only be open for 30 seconds, just really asks you around your understanding of these areas as you came into the session at the beginning of the day. We'll go back to this and get a sort of another update in terms of how you feel at the end of the session. So please do participate in these polls. The information that we get is going to be really valuable. But while you're answering that, perhaps I'll open up to the panelists. And just thinking about these technologies that we've been hearing about, what do you think the most likely impacts are going to be for us in the archives and records world? And we can't crystal gaze massively into the future, but if we look, say, 5 or 10 years out, what sort of things do you think are likely to change? I'm not going to call on individuals, so just chip in with some thoughts, please.
Okay, so I can start, John, if that's okay. So I guess we are living in a very fast world, and we are generating a huge amount of records, data, and we will be using artificial intelligence, blockchain, and other maybe technologies in our day-to-day activities. If we are not using it right now, I guess we are all using AI without even knowing that we're using it. We're using it in our mobile applications, smartphones, tablets, and other devices. And we are 100% sure that this will have a very positive impact on the way that we are dealing with the archives and records. I guess we don't have to go into details when it comes to record managers and archives managers. We don't have to know the exact algorithm behind the system. Yet we need to understand how can we utilize the power of those technologies to serve the industry. And also, we need to understand how are we going to communicate with the IT experts, with the technology experts, to make sure that we deliver the right message for them to help us to come up with the right solution, right products, right systems to serve the digital, archiving and physical records as well. And we are 100% sure that those tools, those techniques will also help us to manage the huge amount of data that we're dealing with. Also, it will be also impacting the skills that we might require to manage those systems and applications.
Thanks. And I see we've got the answers coming up from the first poll. The AI side, it looks like we're kind of medium, although nice to see that there's a few folk who do feel pretty confident in this space. And on the NFTs side, looks like we're, as a community, a little bit less confident in the blockchain and NFT side. So interesting to say. Thank you for participating. Does anyone else want to comment on where you see the likely impacts of these technologies in our world?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Thanks, John. And I just want to add to what Hamad said. I think AI is definitely going to shape archives and record management. And then one thing that I would definitely add is that we have to get to a point where we start being a little bit more comfortable in terms of engaging with technologies. And I think one thing that I liked about the presentation that Mohammed put out there and then that we actually had a chance to watch was the term and that I'm adopting more and more in terms of literacy, right? Like we need to become a little bit more conversant, understanding what is happening behind the scene, right, when it comes to AI. And then I think I'm really excited to see that actually the poll, right, so kind of the community is getting a little bit more comfortable with it. And I think in terms of also training and then the expectation that we're going to have for the next generation of archivists, it's really important that we start building this into what we call the training, right, of our future archivists. And then that's the work as well that I'm trying to do with the Hub of for AI research in archives, is that we're trying to create a platform where people will come, right, to kind of learn and not to have it as something that is kind of because the way we've been trained or formatted as archivists, that you know what, art is really something that we don't want to engage in. But as Hamid said in his response to these questions, that we want to engage with this IT professional at least to have that kind of common understanding, because there is something that archivists are bringing into this conversation. And then with the amount of data of record that we are generating, there's no way for us to kind of escape. So those are my 2 cents that I wanted to add.
Thanks, Rebecca. Samaya, I'm going to pop you on the spot. So I know you've been thinking a lot about how this stuff changes the dynamic between the archival profession and sort of industry and vendors. I don't know if you want to comment a little bit on the impacts or what might happen in that space.
Absolutely, and I think it's partly what everyone has already said. Mohammed mentioned it, I think Rebecca's mentioned it too, is understanding what's going on behind the scenes a little bit more to be able to ask those interrogating questions. I think that what Mohammed was talking about is inequality, and what we don't want to do is make that inequality worse. So to not further disadvantage communities that don't have representation in this space. And, you know, for a lot of the technologies that we're working with, it's come from a particular paradigm, and that is often a white English speaking gendered paradigm. So I think we need to understand the technologies a little bit better, even if it is just rolling up your sleeves and playing with them. So I suspect that many of us will end up having to procure services by external companies because we don't have the large enough organizations or budgets or infrastructures. So in order to deal with that data, we may be bringing in a lot of outside services, and we want to make sure that however that big data sets are being dealt with is being dealt with in ways that we hope that it is being processed. I think the other, so jumping from that idea to the next part of it is this notion of how we centralize our archives to decentralization. And I think there's a big shift, bit of a paradigm shift there in how can we, you know, these concepts aren't new, but how can we do that within an archival practice? Because we like things to be under and to know where they are. And perhaps there's different ways of doing that going forward.
Great. Bertoya, I think, I mean, you made it quite tangible in your presentation. Did you want to add anything about where these technologies will impact?
Thank you. Yes, not only about blockchain, but about artificial intelligence. But first of all, I would like to say that I agree with what David has put in a chat. And I think that archivists and archival community should be a player or a person at a table with a large IT industry in order to influence the development of technology in creation of well, archival records, so to say. In the context of artificial intelligence, I think that, yes, Hamad has put it correctly. We are using some technologies that have AI implemented without even knowing it. We just use it as technology. So this is one way or one layer of using AI from the point of view of archival experts. But also, I think that we should be building new knowledges around IT, because we, as an archivist, will have to reach some new decisions around artificial intelligence. For example, should we be able to archive response or reaction or result of AI? Should we be able to prove how this decision has been made? Is it even possible? Should we archive a training set which was used to train artificial intelligence? Should we archive the code of artificial intelligence? And in the end, who is responsible? Is it the programmer? Is it a person reaching a decision in combination with artificial intelligence? Or even is it artificial intelligence itself? Maybe this is a little bit too science fiction, but you know, I'm just opening up a floor for conversation here.
Thanks. So I'm actually just going to jump the order of the questions that I have here slightly, because you've started to touch on some of the big questions, and I guess I'm interested if anyone has a view on where these technologies bring significant risk to us. What are the challenges or the risks that we need to address?
I think I'm going to say something really quick here, because the more I'm listening, the more I'm wondering, like, in terms of funding, right? In terms of means, in terms of, you know, because one thing that we want to make sure is that we're excited about the technology, But again, we have to understand that there are some parts of the world, there are some countries, there are some institutions that will not be able because they don't have the infrastructure, they don't even have the money, right? And because when we talk about, oh, how do we, where do we save data? And then one thing that I wanted to point out when, Dr. I'm always trying to mispronounce your name, so I'm trying to make sure that I'm doing it right. Stanchit?
Yeah, Hervé.
Hervé. Okay, there you go.
Excellent.
So thank you so much for that. Yeah. So what when Dr. Hervé is talking, and that was it. Okay, so how do we? Who is going to own? Right. So let's say we are combining all we have a center. Who's owning this data? So these are kind of the risk and also the question, because when it comes to owning the data and then the privacy part of it, but I really want to insist on the ownership. So when we centralize things, let's say I'm an institution, I don't have the means, so I'm sending it, I don't know, somewhere, have or whatever, right? Who's owning this data? So am I not taking away the agency? And as I started thinking about what Sumaya mentioned, that most of these technology are actually kind of developed from a Western English, white kind of gender, you know what? So how, when we are moving into a world where we are actually pushing for equality and more equity, how are we making sure that we are not repeating the biases or the disparities that we've built and we are trying to stay away from? So I think these are the dangers that, I would not say the danger, but the risks that we have to consider, and with this new technology, to make sure that now we have this history that we do not want to repeat it, but we want to get into a better world. So that's how I'm going to address that. Yeah.
So while we continue this great discussion, if we can post the second poll just to get a bit of a sense as to how people on the line feel that AI, ML, blockchain, NFTs are going to be used in your own institution. Is it imminent? Is it going to be happening? While we get that poll up and running, does anyone else want to talk about risks? I think there were a few things mentioned in the presentations. One of our speakers talked about ethics in there, which got my attention. So I don't know if anyone wants to talk about the adequacy of our current professional ethics to deal with the new technology landscape.
I'd like to add something, but it's not in direct response to the ethics.
Go
it's
ahead.
actually just an alternative view to what Hamad put forward. Yes, I think there's a lot of AI or machine learning that's going on in our lives that we would have no clue is actually happening behind the scenes. So you apply for a new job, there's systems there to filter out different job applications. You apply for a visa, all of these different things. I think for me, going back to our archival principles, some of that is, yes, we manage content, digital content, our archives in quite open ways and also in secure ways. And I think this just draws back on the transparency. And so for me, if I was working in a digital archival role in any institution around the world, I'd like to know what some of those decisions are that led to a particular set of records or documents or data, whatever it is. And so I think it's now the challenge of people like me that work in digital preservation to start to capture more widely around just the files themselves, but also some of that digital chain. And drawing on what Hervé said earlier, or just a moment ago, actually, that we do need to collect, whose responsibility is it? And I think we do need to collect at different points along that document creation workflow. So is it responsibility of the programmer? Maybe. Let's get some of those archival principles earlier up the chain of digital content creation. And then if everyone does that a little bit along the way, maybe we get to this point where we are collecting content in a way that we want it represented in our archives and that we can provide access to it, because that's the other part of it. If we continue to access in the same way, then we're not going to take advantage of all these new technologies and the ways in which we can interrogate data. So I'll throw it to someone else.
So I like the positive tone that's coming through from everyone on the panel, and I guess I'd like to kind of lean into that a bit. And what do you think is the most exciting feature of these new technologies? And just again, looking at the polls, looks like perhaps reflecting Hamad's comment that AI is everywhere already. Most of us expect to be using it. Looks like the jury's a little bit more out on blockchain and NFTs, despite his examples of how we can use it in a very practical sense. So we'll get another poll up to ask people which functions you think are most amenable to this or most important for it. But in the meantime, do any of the panelists want to talk about what is most exciting for you?
I can start, John, if possible.
Sure.
So I think before maybe answering this question, it's better maybe to understand and analyze the value chain, whether it's records management or archives management, and then deciding on where this technology can boost the process. In my point of view, I see that the data analysis, the capturing first, how to capture data using machine learning and deep learning and AI, can also help in feeding into the classification, the appraisal, reduction, and reduction of the information. We've seen also in the speaker presentations that sensitive, for example, data can be eliminated or can be, redacted based on the context of the information. So I guess we are, we're saying that the new oil is data. So how AI blockchain can turn this data into fact and knowledge and wisdom at the end. So how to transfer the normal data, the raw data, into real facts that we can, benefit from and build on it.
If I can continue on that, I would like to compare the two, if we can call them emerging technologies, but they are technologies and they are being used. So I would say that blockchain might be better positioned at a, let's call that a service level, where you can use it behind the scenes so that you can prove integrity, authenticity of digital records. So it's nothing fancy for our customers, our users, but it could be important for archival community for keeping and preserving authentic, reliable records, which could be used as a proofs in court, for example. On the other hand, as an archival community, I think that we could benefit from the usage of artificial intelligence because we are facing and we are using large amounts of data. We can call them big data. So it is sometimes impossible or hardly possible to process the amount of records that are coming towards the archives in the digital form in a manner that we have been doing this in the context of paper records. So yes, we do need the help of technology of any kind in order to perform better. In this sense, I would say that none of the archivists should be threatened by the technology or should fear of losing jobs. I think we will just be able to work more efficiently with the use of technology, and we should grasp the technology in that sense.
Thanks, Hervé. And I do realize that we're at time, so some folk may need to drop off. We do have another couple of poll questions that we'd really like to ask to really help focus where the ICA's efforts can be put. And yeah, interesting, just the answers there to poll 3. You're seeing that there are impacts right across the various functions that we carry out. Again, these technologies are incredibly pervasive in terms of their opportunities and impact. So we will post another poll asking you to look at where the ICA should focus, what sort of activities we can best deliver. But I guess while we're moving on to that, does anyone on the panel want to mention any other technologies? We've drilled a little bit into AI and machine learning and into blockchain and non-fungible tokens. Are there any other technologies that you'd like to suggest we should also have on our radar?
Sure, I'll jump in. I also think that these aren't necessarily new or emerging technologies. They might just be emerging in our sector a little bit. So, I mean, data is being used quite a bit across the digital humanities. I think that data visualization, because we've been talking a little bit about big data, data sonification. It's a practice that's been around for a long time, but our brains know how to understand complex data sets more through audible sound than they do through using our eyes. And I come from an audio background, so of course I'm going to jump on the sound practices first. But I think that in dealing with our data, in dealing with complex things, there are opportunities, and I don't know that there are tools there for this yet, but I think that that's something that is worth potentially exploring. I also think that, yes, there's a whole lot of augmented reality, virtual reality, etc., that's there. Again, I think about all the challenges from the digital collecting perspective, because none of this is simple, and it was already suggested we start with the simple things and move towards the complex things. So some of this is jumping straight into the complex. But I think there are opportunities to potentially populate the spaces where people already are. There are communities and younger communities in those spaces, in and across social media, and it feels like archives are sometimes just restricted to research and academic and more serious disciplines, but actually we're there for everyone. I don't know that there's necessarily a way of doing this, but I think it's a way of keeping our eyes open to the technologies that could be useful for our spaces.
To complement this, I would like to say that another technology that might be considered as well is gamification, because gamification could be helpful not only in creating games and in this way by using archival materials and by this way reaching out to younger generations. They could also be used in an educational process. But gamification concepts could also help archivists, for example, in transcribing certain materials, because you can gamify that process as well and help enrich the data and the records we're already holding.
Absolutely. And I just want to jump with that and thank you for bringing that, because the gamification is really, a technology that has been out there for a long time, but I think in the world of archives is kind of it seems to be emerging or definitely new. So it's definitely a great way. And one thing that I remember writing a piece with some of my colleagues, it was in January when we talked about how do we use games, right? Gamification, the principle of games into digital collections, right? Not only in digital collections, but when we type exhibitions, how do we gamify all of that? So I think there's a lot of potentials out there. But also one thing that I thought we should also consider in terms of the world, the archival world and record management, is thinking about the metaverse, right? So that's a new world is developing out there. So I think it would be great for us to start thinking about this new virtual environments, right? So because metaverse is combining a lot of technology, be it augmented reality, be it virtual reality. So all of that, where does the archival world place itself in this kind of debate, in this kind of emerging technology? And I think it's good for us to start, like, when is the beginning for us to be involved in that, so that we are not kind of just, behind and always trying to catch up with the discussion out there. So I think those are some technologies that I feel like we are in the world of archives and record management, we should definitely consider that have a great potential.
Thanks, Rebecca. And I just see and keep us moving. Looks like the top two areas for ICA support were educational sessions, which, like this one, I guess, and to some of the earlier stuff about making it real, the implementation advice. So our next question, we do want to just see who is interested in working with the ICA, being involved in further sessions. So I'm going to collect some names and contact details for folk who want to help the community navigate this session further. And then the final poll that we have after that is around just the sense as to your level of understanding as you leave the session at the end of today. I think it was always going to be ambitious to try and have an extensive conversation about such broad territory in a relatively compact webinar like this. But I think what I'm going to do here is just really note that we've scratched the surface. We've shown that there's an awful lot of territory to explore, and encourage people to get involved with the ICA as we as a community look to navigate this territory through the building of confidence, upskilling ourselves, getting involved in some of the tangible projects. Some great comments in the chat that I know we'll take away, and like David, I'm really pleased to see that the issues of inclusion and equity and I guess some of those sort of social justice dynamics have also surfaced in the conversation. This is not, as a number of you have said, just about a deep understanding of complex technologies. It is much more about the function of archives in the world and how we navigate this space. So Meg, David, I hope you're getting a few folk putting names in there who are keen to be part of the conversation going forward. And with that, I will thank our panelists so much for your contributions. We could talk all day about this stuff, and hopefully some of us will be in Rome and will talk all day and all night about this stuff. So on that note, Meg, I think I'm handing back to you.
Thank you very much. And we do have one more poll question about essentially whether you feel like you understand these issues more at this point than you did when you first entered this event today. So one more poll for you, but please send us your contact information if you're interested in participating in this conversation on an ongoing basis. That is what we're really hoping to do today. So thank you again to everyone for your insights, to our panelists, but also to the audience. This was a really useful chat stream, and we appreciate your input into our polls very much. We're going to be continuing this conversation going forward. And this is just the sort of information we need to launch the ongoing conversation across ICA bodies that we've been hearing our ICA members really want. So at the upcoming ICA conference in Rome this September, one of the major sub-themes under the theme of the conference will be bridging the digital gap. And that was the sub-theme that got the highest number of proposals for papers. So it's going to be one of the major topics of discussion in Rome. We really hope you're all planning to be there. And then in 2023, ICA will be meeting in Abu Dhabi. So Hamid, are there going to be ways for us to continue this conversation all the way through to 2023?
Thank you, Meg. We definitely intend for today's event to be the kickoff for an ongoing initiative. So this is simply the beginning of our discussion about the emerging technologies. And we will be continuing our discussion in the future events. So at this time, please let me return the floor over to the President, David Fricker, to make a final closing remarks.
Thank you very much, Hamad, for that. Look, I know we are running out of time, so I've been very, very impressed with the discussion tonight. That has opened a lot of new avenues of thinking to me. So I think this has been a very productive session. And as you've just said, Hamad, this is the beginning of a very timely, important, and I think it's going to be a very fruitful conversation right across the membership of the ICA. And I think I'd like to just tie this back to the ICA strategic plan of empowering archives. and for our members to understand we are doing this because we said we're going to do this in the strategic plan. And this is one of those pillars of collaboration and networking. This is a new way for the ICA to really harness the collaborative power of the ICA's membership. Look, just by way of finalising the proceedings for this evening, I won't name all of our fantastic speakers again, but I really want to say thank you to each of you for the contributions that you've done, our moderators and speakers. But I do particularly just want to thank Hamad Al-Matairi, because Hamad, you actually inspired this, as you will recall, and you also worked so hard on the program that we've had tonight. Also to Meg Phillips, Meg, for your vision and your coordination through the many complexities of what we've seen tonight in this, or tonight, wherever you are in this session. And finally, someone who's been behind the scenes, our Head of Communications and Partnerships, Maria Paula Garcia Mosquera. Maria Paula, you've done a fantastic and amazing work behind the scenes to make today's event such a success. So thank you all to the entire team. Look, just by way of now finishing, I just really encourage all of us to now stay connected and stay engaged with the many other International Archives Week events which are going on either online or indeed on premise at many institutions around the world. So once again, stay in touch, stay engaged, stay connected. Goodbye, everyone, and thank you once again for your participation. Thank you.